My family kicked me out for being gay at 16, but 12 years later they demanded I pay for my sister's wedding. They protested outside my home and now have a restraining order. I'm 28 years old. I work for a pretty big wedding company in the city, and if you had told me 12 years ago that my life was going to end up like this, I honestly wouldn't have believed you. The thing is that when I was 16 years old, my parents, Helen and Anthony, basically threw me out on the street because I came out of the closet. And from that moment until about 6 months ago, I hadn't had any contact with them or my sister Grace. And honestly, I was perfectly fine with that. I mean, I had made peace with that whole situation years ago. But turns out the universe has a really twisted sense of humor. Because just when I thought I had left all that family drama in the past, everything exploded in the most absurd way possible. And I need to tell this story because I still can't believe it actually happened. Let me rewind a bit so you understand how we got here. When I was 16 and came out to my parents, the reaction was worse than I had imagined, in my worst nightmares. My mom, Helen, looked at me like I was a stranger, like she didn't know me. And my dad, Anthony, literally told me I had 1 hour to pack my things and get out of his house. My sister Grace, who was like 14 at the time, just stood there saying nothing, looking at the floor. I remember I tried to talk to her before leaving. I was hoping she would at least say something, but she just ignored me and went into her room. I took what I could fit in a backpack and a suitcase and left without having any idea where I was going. I spent the first 2 nights sleeping in the park near school, using my jacket as a pillow, and I honestly thought I was going to end up in a shelter or something worse. But this is where Amber comes in, my best friend since middle school, who basically saved my life. When she found out what had happened, she told her parents and they, without thinking twice, let me stay at their house. I slept on their couch for almost a full year while I finished high school, and Amber's family never made me feel like a burden. They never treated me differently. I worked part-time at a coffee shop to help with expenses, and eventually I was able to get a small apartment with 2 roommates. When I started college, I studied event management because, I don't know, I always liked organizing things and making celebrations special for people. And after graduating, I got this job at the wedding company where I've been for like 5 years now. The company where I work isn't one of those small wedding businesses. I mean, we're pretty big and we have connections with practically all the important vendors in the city, from florists to photographers, DJs, event venues, everything. I started as an assistant, but now I'm a senior coordinator. And let's just say that over the years I've built really good relationships with all our vendors because we bring them a lot of business. My boss Christine is amazing. She supported me a ton in my career, and she basically trusts me to handle our most important clients. I've coordinated weddings with up to 300 people. Weddings with budgets of over $100,000, super elaborate, themed weddings, everything. So, fast forward to like 8 months ago. Amber, the same Amber who saved me when I was 16, tells me she's getting married to her boyfriend of 6 years. Obviously, I was super excited for her. This girl literally gave me a roof when I had nothing, and now she was going to have her big day. The thing is that Amber and her fiancé didn't have much money. They were saving for a down payment on a house, and their wedding budget was pretty tight, like around $15,000 for everything, which in this city doesn't get you much if you go through normal channels. So I thought, you know what? This is my chance to pay her back even just a little bit for everything she did for me. I started making calls, sent emails, talked to all my contacts in the industry. I got her the event venue at cost because the owner owes me several favors for all the clients I've sent him over the years. I contacted a florist friend of mine who gave me a huge discount in exchange for me promising to send her more clients. I got an incredible photographer who normally charges like $5,000, but who agreed to do it for $1,500 because he's a friend of a friend. The DJ, the cake, even the rental of the chairs and tables, I got everything with massive discounts or at cost. In the end, Amber ended up spending like $8,000 on a wedding that would have easily cost $30,000 or more if she had contracted everything on her own. She was crying tears of happiness when I showed her all the numbers, and honestly, I got emotional too because, truth is, it felt good to be able to do that for someone who really deserved it. Amber's wedding was about 7 months ago, and it was beautiful. Everything went perfectly. She was radiant. The place looked amazing with all the flowers and decorations, The food was delicious, and basically all our friends wouldn't stop telling me I had done an incredible job. A few days after the wedding, Amber posted on Facebook a super long post thanking everyone who had made her special day possible, and she tagged me saying something like, "Thanks to Avery for using their wedding coordinator magic and connections to give me the wedding of my dreams without breaking the bank. We literally couldn't have done it without you." It was a really sweet post. I liked it, commented something cheesy, and moved on with my life. I didn't think anything of it, honestly. But turns out my family, that family that hadn't spoken to me in 12 years, saw that post. I don't know how, I guess Grace or someone has me stalked on social media or something, but like 2 days after Amber posted that, I get a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered because sometimes clients call me from new numbers, and the voice on the other end was my mom, Helen. I hadn't heard her voice in over a decade, and honestly my first instinct was to hang up, but something made me stay on the line. She didn't even ask me how I was or anything. She went straight to the point. She told me she had seen Amber's post, that she knew I worked in weddings now and that I had all these connections, and that she needed me to do the same thing for my sister Grace's wedding. I was literally in shock. Like, seriously? After 12 years without talking to me, without even asking if I was alive, the first thing she says to me is that she wants me to pay for my sister's wedding? I told her no, that Grace wasn't my problem and that I didn't owe any of them anything. Helen started with the typical speech of, "But she's your sister, we're family, you have to help her, blah blah blah." I reminded her, because apparently she had forgotten, that they had thrown me out on the street when I was a minor, that they had cut all contact with me, and that now they had no right to ask me for anything. She got all defensive, saying they had been going through a difficult time, that they had acted emotionally, and that it was time to let the past go. I told her that I let the past go years ago, but that didn't mean I had to do anything for them, and I hung up. I thought that was the end of it, but oh no, that was just the beginning. I started receiving text messages from numbers I didn't know, from uncles and cousins who I didn't even know had my number, all basically telling me the same thing, that I was selfish, that I should help my sister, that family is the most important thing. Pure nonsense. Some messages were more aggressive than others. Like, there were people telling me I was a horrible person for denying my sister this on her special day. I blocked like 15 numbers in 1 week, but more kept appearing. Then, like a week after that initial call, I get a call at my work. Our receptionist transfers the call to me saying there's a Miss Grace on the line, asking for me, and I thought maybe it was a new client, because it's a common name. I answer and it's my sister Grace, who hadn't said a word to me in 12 years. She starts yelling at me, literally yelling at me, saying I'm a horrible brother, how dare I help my friends but not my own blood, that I told everyone in the family that I was better than them. I told her I had no idea what she was talking about, that I had never said anything about them to anyone, and that she needed to stop calling me at work. She kept yelling, saying I owed her this, that my parents had spent thousands of dollars raising me, and that the least I could do was return the favor by helping with her wedding. I told her that made no sense, that raising a child is a parent's responsibility, not a loan you have to pay back later, and I hung up. I blocked the office number so she couldn't call again, but the damage was done. Some of my coworkers had heard parts of the conversation because Grace was yelling so loud it could be heard even without speakerphone, and it was super awkward having to explain to them afterwards that it was a family matter. Christine, my boss, called me to her office to ask if everything was okay, and I told her the summarized version of what was happening. She was very understanding and told me that if something like that happened again, not to hesitate to let her know immediately. But Grace didn't stop there. A few days later, she started posting on her social media vague posts, but obviously directed at me. Like, it's amazing how some people only help their friends but turn their backs on their own family. Or things like, when your brother prefers to impress strangers than support his sister on the most important day of her life. She didn't mention my name directly, but she tagged several family members in the posts, and basically everyone could infer who she was talking about. I started receiving more messages from family members, some trying to make me feel guilty, others directly insulting me. I honestly thought they would eventually get tired and leave me alone. But like 2 weeks after all this, I'm at work on a Tuesday afternoon, coordinating the final details for a weekend wedding, when the receptionist calls me on the intercom and tells me there are two people at the reception asking for me. I go down thinking they're clients or vendors. And there are Helen and Grace, my mom and my sister, standing in my office reception. My heart literally started beating super fast, and I felt like I was going to have a panic attack. Right there, Helen started talking loudly, like loud enough for everyone in the reception to hear, saying it was a shame that her son was ignoring them, that they just wanted to talk to me about Grace's wedding, that she didn't understand why I was being so difficult about all this. Grace was standing there, with her arms crossed, looking at me like I was the villain of the story. I told them they needed to leave, that they couldn't just show up at my work like this. But Helen kept talking, saying that if I really worked helping people with their weddings, why couldn't I help my own sister? Several of my coworkers peeked out to see what was happening, and I felt like I wanted to die of embarrassment. I called security, which in our building are just two guys, but they came and asked Helen and Grace to leave. My mom started making a scene saying it was ridiculous, that they just wanted to talk to their son, but eventually they left after one of the guards told them that if they didn't leave voluntarily, they were going to have to call the police. I went back up to my floor, a bundle of nerves, and Christine saw me and told me to take the rest of the day off, that I clearly needed to process what had just happened. I got to my apartment and just sat on the couch, unable to believe what had happened. I called Amber and told her everything, and she was furious, saying she couldn't believe my family had the nerve to do that after all these years. I felt angry, frustrated, but also, I don't know, part of me felt guilty, which is super stupid because I hadn't done anything wrong, but that's how toxic families are, right? They make you feel guilty even when you shouldn't. Like 3 days after that scene at my work, I receive an envelope in the mail. I open it and it's a formal invitation to Grace's wedding, one of those expensive invitations with thick paper and gold lettering. Inside, there was a handwritten note from Grace that said something like, "Despite your actions, you're still my brother, and I want you to be there on my special day. We hope you'll reconsider your decision not to help us, and that you'll come celebrate with us." The wedding was planned for 4 months from then, according to the invitation. I threw it in the trash immediately. I decided that was enough. I blocked Helen, Anthony, and Grace on all my social media, blocked all the phone numbers I had from them, and basically tried to completely disappear from their radar. It worked for like a week, and then Helen started calling me from numbers. I didn't have blocked other people's numbers, I guess. Once I answered without thinking, and it was her. Starting again with the same speech. This time, I told her very clearly that if they kept harassing me, I was going to take legal action. She laughed, literally laughed, and said I wouldn't do anything, that I was just being dramatic. I told her I was serious and hung up. But the thing is, I was serious. I was already fed up with all this. With the constant harassment, the messages, the calls, the appearance at my work. I talked to a friend who knows a lawyer, his name is Daniel, and he got me a consultation. I told him the whole situation, and he told me I definitely had grounds to request a restraining order, especially considering they had gone to my workplace and caused a scene. We started the process immediately, gathering all the text, messages, call logs, screenshots of social media posts, everything. While I was waiting for the restraining order to be processed, things escalated even more, because apparently my family didn't understand the concept of leaving me alone. One Saturday morning, like at 9, I'm in my apartment, still in pajamas, drinking coffee and watching Netflix, when I hear noise outside. I look out the window, and I can't believe what I see. Grace is out there, on the sidewalk in front of my building, with like 3 or 4 of her friends, and they're holding signs. Signs. Like it was a protest. I run downstairs, still in pajamas with a jacket on top, and the signs said things like, "Avery abandoned his family," or "Friends aren't more important than blood," pure nonsense like that. There were some neighbors looking from their windows, others coming out to see what was happening, and I honestly wanted the earth to swallow me. I yelled at Grace to leave, that she was making a fool of herself, but she just yelled back at me, saying she wasn't going to leave until I agreed to help her with her wedding. I called the police immediately. They arrived like 20 minutes later, which felt like hours, and I explained the situation to them. The officers talked to Grace and her friends and told them they were disturbing the peace and that they needed to leave or they were going to arrest them for disturbances. Grace tried to argue that she was just exercising her right to protest, but one of the cops told her that didn't apply in this case, and that if they didn't leave voluntarily, he was going to have to fine them. Eventually, they left, but not before Grace yelled at me that this wasn't over. That same afternoon, I called Daniel, the lawyer, and told him what had happened. He expedited the restraining order process, and like a week later, it was approved. Basically, Helen, Anthony, and Grace were prohibited from contacting me in any way, whether in person, by phone, by text message, by email, by social media. Nothing. They also couldn't come within 100 meters of my house or my work. They were officially notified about the order, and I thought I was finally going to have peace. But guess what? Anthony decided it was his turn to try something. I got a call from an unknown number, and like an idiot, I answered. It was my dad, who literally hadn't spoken to me since he kicked me out of the house 12 years ago. He started with the typical speech about how parents always want the best for their children, that they had made mistakes but that family should always forgive, and that I should think about Grace because she had nothing to do with what happened when I was a teenager. I reminded him that Grace had been present when they kicked me out and didn't say absolutely anything to defend me, and that besides she had been an active part of all this harassment for the past months. Anthony completely ignored that and kept saying that if I didn't help with the wedding, I was going to regret it. He didn't specify what that meant, but it sounded pretty threatening. I told him there was a restraining order, and that with that call he was violating it, and that I was going to report him. He hung up immediately. I reported the call to the police, and they talked to Anthony, warning him that the next violation would result in arrest. That finally seemed to scare them enough to stop with the direct calls, but like 2 weeks later I receive an email. It was from Justin, Grace's fiancé, someone I didn't even know in person. The email was long and full of emotional manipulation, basically saying he understood I had had a complicated relationship with my family, but that this had nothing to do with the past. That Grace just wanted to have a nice wedding like everyone deserves, and that I had the power to make that happen without actually spending my money, just using my connections. He said they weren't rich people, that they had been saving for months, but it wasn't enough, and that it would be an incredible gesture on my part to help them. He ended the email saying he hoped I would reconsider my decision and not let pride ruin the opportunity to reconnect with my family. I didn't even respond to him. I simply deleted it and blocked his email too. I sent a copy to Daniel just in case, even though technically Justin wasn't named in the restraining order, but I wanted to have everything documented. The wedding date was approaching, and I kept getting occasional contact attempts, but nothing as intense as before. Some cousins I didn't know well sent me messages on LinkedIn or Instagram from accounts I didn't know existed, but I blocked them immediately. Christine at my work was amazing throughout all this, always asking how I was and making sure I felt supported. Amber and her husband were also a great support system, constantly reminding me that I wasn't doing anything wrong by maintaining my boundaries. Grace's wedding date came and went. I didn't go, obviously. I didn't find out anything about how it all turned out, and I didn't care to find out. I blocked all the family members I could find on social media so I wouldn't see anything related to it. I guess they finally got married and found a way to pay for their wedding without my help, which, to be honest, was always possible. They just wanted me to do it for free or super cheap, and when I didn't agree to that, they created all this drama. It's been like 2 months since the wedding date and things have been quiet. I haven't received any contact from any of them since then. I don't know if they finally understood I wasn't going to give in or if they simply got tired, but honestly, I don't care. The restraining order is still in effect for a full year, and if they try anything after it expires, I'll renew the order without thinking twice. What surprises me most about all this is how my family, people who didn't speak to me for 12 years, felt they had the right to demand a help from me just because they saw I helped my best friend. As if the fact that I had connections in the wedding industry meant I automatically owed them something. And the craziest thing is that if Grace had come to me respectfully, without demands, maybe, just maybe, I would have considered helping her at least a little bit. I don't know. But the way they handled everything, with the harassment, the threats, the scene at my work, the ridiculous protest outside my building, all of that just confirmed to me that making the decision to keep them out of my life was the right thing from the beginning. Amber tells me I shouldn't feel even a little bit of guilt, that I don't owe them anything, and that family isn't defined by blood, but by the people who are there for you when you really need them. She and her family were more family to me than Helen, Anthony, and Grace ever were. And she's right, honestly. These last few weeks, I've been sleeping better, knowing that all that drama finally ended, that I can go to work without being afraid they'll show up there, that I can be in my apartment without worrying they'll organize another ridiculous protest outside. I don't regret anything. I maintained my boundaries, I defended myself, and I took the necessary legal actions to protect myself. If that makes me selfish or a bad brother according to their perspective, well, that's fine. I can live with that. I spent 12 years building a life without them, a life I'm proud of, with a job I like, friends who truly support me, and emotional and financial stability. I wasn't going to let them ruin all of that just because they decided that now they did want something from me.